we're past AI as a buzzword, very clearly. You know, I could say lots of things like it's going to disrupt industries across, including all the industries and sectors that are represented in this room. But today we really want to talk about delivering AI. And we're all really excited that you know, hero sponsors Scan and Nvidia were here. You know, you get sponsors who are just interested in putting their name out into the open. But here we've got two institutions that are genuinely seeking to reach out and to have a conversation with all of you. So it's really my great pleasure to introduce to you the panel. So we have Linda Crawley here. She's the Industry Business Lead, Media and Entertainment at Nvidia. We've got Sunil Mistry, Head of AI at Scan, and we've got Simon Isherwood, Provis Specialist at Nvidia. So please give them a good round of applause for the panel. So my aim is to shut up as soon as possible and let you talk to the exciting people. There's two things we want to talk about in this talk. And obviously, when you think about NVIDIA, there's a lot of things that are visible that we know of. So maybe can I start, Linda, asking you, a lot of the people in here, they work with AI, or they're maybe not technical. It'd be great if we could get a sense for some of the examples that are on the bleeding edge that are potentially sort of at the intersection or even very much within the creativity, media and entertainment space.
Yeah, so what we're seeing a lot of and what we advocate at NVIDIA is we'd like to work with the Einsteins and the Da Vincis of this world, and it's scientists versus creatives and creatives versus scientists, and I'm personally not sure who comes up with the ideas first, but that's for debate. But what we're seeing a lot of is sort of what next. There's lots of archives out there, there's lots of content out there, what can we do with it? Are actresses and actresses going to be required in the future? Perhaps not. There's lots of facial recognition out there, there's lots of facial manipulation. Can we create new celebrities that look familiar but don't actually exist? And yes, we can. And then what can we do with that data? Can we recreate voices? And yes, we can. We also work with something like 1,400 inception companies at NVIDIA, purely to help us with the ideas. And then back at Santa Clara, we've got about 10,000 developers, again, working with algorithms, what's next, what else can we do? And really, this is how we'd like to engage with you guys, is to what do you see the future? What can we help you with? And we're very happy to work with you individually or in groups together as to what's coming next, because it's just so exciting.
Brilliant. And it's worth adding to that. I mean, the sheer amount of data that's being generated.
Yes.
And whilst we only came in on the back of the last presentation, there's a clear talk there about an immense amount of data. It's what we do with that data and how we work on that data and how quickly we work on that data. And that's something that you know, we're here to make sure we enable the speed of processing that data to create the sort of ideas that Linda's just discussed.
Yeah, we want the creatives to be more creative. We want them to just concentrate on the final cut, the absolute peak, and let all the sort of the mundane tasks be done using artificial intelligence, so they can absolutely concentrate on what's next. So it's like, where's the world going next? And that's where we want to be.
So you mentioned these interfaces, how you work with startup companies,
yes.
And I think there's startup companies here, there are big companies in the room, but there's also a large percentage of academics. What are the sort of processes to engage beyond today and, you know, obviously?
Yeah, we have an inception team across NVIDIA that covers different geographies, and yes, I can put anyone in touch with those guys and they can start the conversations on how we work with inception companies. Normally it's sort of an idea or a seed that an inception company's got an idea, and they have to start the conversation. And as I say, they're then opened up to the sort of the experts and technical scientists within NVIDIA to continue that conversation, and then just help with their business flow and help get those businesses off the ground, and then to drive it into larger customers to then help develop the idea so it becomes sort of general adoption. And that's the ultimate plan, from sort of start-up to general adoption. And as I say, we're working with 1,400 of them sort of globally. So yeah.
Brilliant. I think I'd like to go back to some of the concrete use cases for the productivity space. But before, Sunil, you know, Scan is an elite solution provider for NVIDIA, and you know, you've got a really exciting platform and ecosystem out there. And you've got a mission for today, which is to sort of tease out some of the use cases. But I think it'd really be interesting for people to hear about what Scan does with Nvidia and give a bit of meat to all the exciting things you do on the ground and making things happen.
Yeah, sure. Firstly, it's absolutely fantastic to be at TVX and to engage and see the crowd here. So firstly, thank you for that. We're engaging with various industries across the UK. Some very exciting projects in academia. We're working on a cutting-edge AI-enabled neurology project with King's College London. So that's kind of aiding how the NHS can move forward and how we can use technology. You can almost say it's maybe not AI as such, assisted intelligence to kind of help clinicians make decisions to improve patient care. But if I kind of move on to various other use cases, just to maybe create a picture, we also work with the financial services industry. So there's various banks in Canary Wharf. And they have a problem around fraud detection. So we use machine learning and the umbrella term of AI to kind of help track down where there is an issue or a problem to kind of save banks money. And if we look at various other use cases, so within oil and gas, exploration, simulation, and also fueling stations. So looking at the computer vision piece of where we can help with health and safety. So aspects of computer vision can actually aid preventative maintenance at fueling stations worldwide. And then if we move into other industry verticals, we have applications at the Ministry of Defence, various other defence countries and companies across Europe which are keen to implement, but obviously they are quite coy as to their applications. Commercial companies and tier ones have huge R&D budgets, so again, we'll engage with them as and when they require. And then we have some interesting use cases in automotive. So again, there's aspects there of augmented reality simulation and robotic assembly lines. So it then kind of spills over onto the IoT aspect. And we've had some very, very interesting use cases in the F1 industry. So not only computational fluid dynamics, but again, looking at when cars need to actually pit, trackside analytics, tire degradation, again, just to win races. And then just touching on Linda's point on startups, there's it's really nice to see that there's such a huge industry for creatives, media, entertainment. And within the startup environment, there's been, companies only 2 weeks ago on the BBC, which we work with, a startup company have now developed their next stage of flying taxis, which we've actively engaged with. And again, we're helping to kind of work with them across their use cases in industry.
Brilliant. And I think, we'll come back to this, but I think there is, even though some of these areas that you mentioned aren't directly overlapping with the media and creativity space, I think there's some really fascinating thread that runs through all of them, which is, in ultimately helping people make sense of data and enabling people to do with a certain amount of creativity their jobs and push that further.
Florian, it's worth adding as well that with what Scan are doing for academia around the data science workstation, you're building out from that menu card that we've developed, and you're now delivering that into academia. So we're back to that data theme. You're delivering a platform that you don't have to build out yourselves. It's something you can switch on and start working with instantly. So we can start working with all the necessary software libraries to develop out what the creative types are moving forward to next. So those in academia are able to educate the next level of future creatives, future scientists, and so on. And Scan, you guys are enabling that. Certainly help enabling that for us.
But we also are seeing businesses get closer to each other, industries get closer, because the autonomous vehicles you were talking about, and we do have a couple running around Santa Clara, I have to say, they go out on a regular basis.
Have you tried putting them down here in Manchester and see what
Not
happens?
just yet, not just yet. They
Too
do
gridlocked.
have people sitting there just looking like they're holding on to the steering wheel, but they're actually not. So as not to put off oncoming drivers. But it's not going to be too far into the future that the car is going to become a media centre. So, and that's what we want to be thinking about, so moving to the future. And architecturally, we were discussing this earlier, is also getting closer to media, because their desire to not build models anymore, but have an augmented virtual reality experience to describe and go through. So this is what your building is going to look like, without actually then having to sort of put bricks and mortar together. So I think industries are getting closer.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds really exciting. I was wondering, Linda and Simon, if you could, I mean, there's some obviously very relevant, exciting things happening. We're working with Doc10 for the Weaver project, who now use real-time rendering for their virtual studio sets. The whole notion and the whole movement towards creating really photorealistic content in the moment, not pre-rendered, but ad hoc. So enabling all sorts of things like interactive stories, personalized experience. Can you say sort of around an overview of the sort of production-based technologies and technologies within Nvidia that enable audiences to engage in new ways?
Well, we're looking at a lot of analytics at the edge, which I think has been just briefly touched on. So to get as much analytics from the consumer as we possibly can to drive that content, to give referenceable content back to them. So it's not just you watch box set A, therefore you're going to watch box set B in the same series, but much more referenceability of, so you like that, therefore you might like this, this and this. So there's those sorts of scenarios that we're looking at. So it's very, very key to get as much analytics and data as we can from the end user. So that's one thing we're looking at.
Yeah, and I guess you're talking about the adoption of real-time render. You know, that's just being able to respond, not immediately, but within reason immediately to the data requirements, to say that this is what a consuming environment wants. So we can now render effectively and more immersively to deliver exactly what that audience wants. That's where we're progressing the development of RTX ray tracing for the moment. There's probably an immense amount we could talk about it. We could potentially go on all day about it, but keeping it niche to a specific audience.
Well, we've after this we've got all day, so this is an open invitation.
Felt the whole opening up in front of me then.
And then we'd like to make that a collaborative exercise as well. So not only is it sort of somebody real-time ray tracing, but also whatever you're doing, whatever part of the world you're in, you could have 3 different artists working on the same image at the same time and see exactly what each other's doing. So make it a much more collaborative experience. So you haven't got to sort of divide your projects up into this is what I'm doing, this is what you're doing, and this is what he or she's doing, but all together. And that's the next forthcoming attraction too.
So that's the term we call is Omniverse.
Omniverse,
for that.
yes.
And then moving that forward to something we're still terming holodeck is around the idea of interacting with those workspaces using VR and AR. So
Yes.
Well, actually, I mean that was an interesting thing. We've had a lot of contributions so far that the immersive space is clearly relevant, and could you just describe a little bit where you see the platform and Nvidia fit within that space?
Well, I guess the example we're giving there is the Omniverse example is that we may have a number of different teams working on different aspects, whether it's the design of a specific object within an environment. We'll have a team working on that. We'll have a team working on the colours of the background environment that object's going to be present in. There'll be another team working on the world that object and that colour palette is going to be present in. Now, rather than have those teams working independently and then passing the information on so that then we can overlay at some point later, what we're now doing with Omniverse is Team A is working on that palette and how that palette affects what Team B is working on, i.e. the object. This may be an aircraft, let's say. So Team B is working on the design and development and how that aircraft looks. And as they change the nose cone, Team A sees that nose cone change because it's happening at the real time that's going on. The whole world environment, that plane is being developed in an aircraft hangar, and that's suddenly let's look at what it looks like when it's sat on the runway. So Team C as making that development, and immediately Team A and Team B see that happen right away. So we're immediately speeding up the process for any kind of production environment, because they see it all happening at once, rather than waiting for Team A to catch up with Team B or Team C to deliver their results, and so on and so forth. That's the approach that we're taking.
Brilliant. So let's narrow down a little bit more to the really the core of AI, which is the computing side. You know, Sanal, I think a lot of even universities and sort of medium corporation sort of struggle to, you know, there's the I and the premise of it and all the possibilities, and then there's the, all right, so what do we install? How do we get it going? And where's the expertise coming from to actually make these things happen? Because, I mean, that's important for translational research, right? So there's a lot of shift in academia towards making things that actually work in practice, but also for our industry members in the audience. I mean, that's a key challenge. And I think there's quite some exciting parts of your ecosystem that seek to really facilitate that.
Yeah, sure. Just to help echo the points from Linda and Simon, to work with industry, what we have put together as part of an ecosystem is the ability for industry, customers, academia, to onboard onto our proof of concept environment. So we have various platforms, storage, software, which we would then take customers through a guided approach. So our data science practice, infrastructure, Linux, security teams would work with the tech teams of the client, and we'll, in effect, handhold a proof of concept, establish a success criteria based upon your key goals and your data sets, and really kind of offer support and guidance. From a SCAM perspective, we're here really to learn. So if there are industry use cases which you'd want to potentially discuss, we're happy to discuss those further. Also, a key element of working with industry is the education piece. So there's a lot of customers which approach us and a little bit unsure how to kind of take that next step into deep learning, into AI. And so we do have an education piece which we can then work with the customer on to help educate the client's team to add value. And along with that, you know, we have industry professionals. So we have Emily and Matt, who are professionals in the industry of professional video. We have Dan, who's here also, and you can support that AI side. Now, if there is an interest from anyone, we do have free access to online courses, and we're happy to kind of maybe register your interest and send you out a free voucher. So again, that can be done outside, but we're here to learn, and we're here to engage with media, creative, and the entertainment industry to understand your use cases to support how you would like to move forward.
So you mentioned earlier, you've got some really high-profile, successful, impactful collaborations going with academia. So just speaking about the surgery technology with UCL, I think. Can you speak a little bit to the academics in the room about what are the ingredients for kicking off such a relationship, and sort of what are the steps from academia to reach out and bring someone like Scan on board for their proposals?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, the engagement with King's College London just came about as there's funding available, as academia will know, through Innovate UK. There's UKIR. And you know, there's a push forward in various subjects and topic areas. So neurology was a big topic for King's as well as UCL, which we're both engaging with. And the team really engaged with the universities to understand what they would like to do and help support that. So initially they moved on to our proof of concept environment, and then as you know, the journey took place, we were able to kind of engage further. So that's now led on to a project with Imperial, who again, they've won a significant amount of money through the government to kind of aid PhD students and doctoral training. And we're currently engaged with two key projects which stand out. One is with the University of Warwick, which is based on pathology. You know, the images have thousands of subsets. So how do we help use GPU technology and multi-GPU coding to use to help that department in that hospital? And we've engaged with University of Edinburgh on retina imaging. So as you can go to maybe have an eye test at Vision Express, you do have the option to have you know, an image taken of your retina, which can then obviously diagnose glaucoma and maybe various other aspects of diagnosis. Now, we're working with medical schools to diagnose further. The thought being long-term with the NHS, if you go to your GP, you're able to kind of have early warning and detection signs through these images to, you know, be a preventative measure and to improve overall patient care.
Brilliant. And I think that should be a good template also for you know, really independent of the application area, really to reach out and get these ideas going together. All right, Linda, I was wondering, we talked about it a little bit before. You know, when we look at AI in the context of creativity, it's that last stronghold humanity has where we feel probably least threatened of being taken over. But I think there's a really multifaceted and good view. And so can you just talk a little bit about what's the role of AI in the space of creativity? How do you see that moving forward?
Yeah, I think there's lots of different ways it can be used, and some of the ways I'm seeing and some of the things we're being asked at Nvidia is, you know, content. There's a massive amount of content, and there's the sort of the metadata. Do you know what you've got? So there's a recognizing of what content you've got, and then there's the use of the content, and there's the use of the audio, there's the use of the text, and there's the use of the you know, the film. Or the video, and it's like, what else can you do with it? So in some respects, it's, can we write the algorithm so we can recognize actors and actresses? Can we write the algorithm so we can find violence and eradicate that? Can we use content pre-watershed and post-watershed and take out any swearing, violence, and anything that's that's not appropriate for pre-watershed, and therefore by use the same content? And that's where, again, industries get together, because one thought process was there wasn't actually enough violence that will enable the training of a neural network to then identify violence. But then if you link that to the police force and the content they have, where they have policemen and women looking at, unfortunately, video from paedophiles to recognise and produce a prosecution case, then you can use those algorithms to then apply to the media industry to find those scenes of violence. So it's the, you know, the world's your oyster. You can take it as far as you like. Then there's product placement and replacement in sort of advertising. That could be advertising around stadiums. It could be advertising in adverts. It could be product placement in program content. So it really is the world's your oyster. But you start with an algorithm and you start with training the network. And we have lots of software-defined kits that enable that start to happen. And then you can develop your own. So, and again, we're there to help. So it's really exciting, yeah. Brilliant.
So on that note, I think everyone would be really excited to hear some of these, as you call them, deep dark secrets over in the States. What is next for Nvidia?
Oh, we'd be quite excited to hear what the deep. The sad part of that is that we as Nvidian employees, we don't get to see the deep dark secrets because everything's going on in Santa Clara. The reality is, and the latest buzzword we've got at the moment is RTX. You've heard us talk about RTX. That is the latest and greatest thing that literally has come out to the market in the last 3 to 6 months. The adoption now, as software begins to accelerate to take advantage of ray tracing, we see what all of the creatives out there can do with RTX and what they can create. So we at Nvidia have said, right, here we go. Here's the next great thing. Now go and do something with it. What are you going to go and do with it? As we mentioned earlier about holodeck and Omniverse, you know, these are the collaborative tools of the future. They are just being announced now. To be able to have an impact using those tools on industry is what we will see over the coming months. The render tools that we've got out there are now just beginning to be RTX aware and GPU aware. So we're seeing the impact of that as we move forward. The what next, I guess the only thing I could suggest you do is go to YouTube and watch IAM AI from the latest GTC 2019. What you'll see there, and some of my friends ask me, what does Nvidia do? I point them to that video because we're involved in so many different industries and we're impacting so many different vertical markets. It is mind-blowing and quite humbling as well in what we create to allow creative and scientists to create thereafter is, well, for me, phenomenal. So I can't really say any more about what's going on in Santa Clara because we just seriously don't know what is going on next. But what is going on next will probably see the light of day in the next 5 and 10 years. As Linda, you said earlier, RTX was being worked on, a number of years and months ago. So we're only now seeing the fruition of that.
Yeah, RTX was 10 years in the developing.
Yeah, it's
in
incredible.
development, and certainly our CEO is very much a case of once that's done, it's like, what's next?
Yeah.
Right.
And let's get the fastest computer in the world and the best ray tracer in the world.
Yeah.
And we'd like your input as well as to where do you see what next, and then we can feed that back to Santa Clara and just say, go do this.
It's kind of like asking Lego, what are they building next? Well, nobody's going to tell you because the shutters come down at that point. So he's asking that kind of question. Whoa.
Yeah. But I mean, so the next thing doesn't always have to be a shiny new piece of hardware. And in fact, the sort of thing that really sort of struck home with me, we said in preparation for this panel, is the next thing can be making the usage much more accessible,
Sure.
and particularly what you do in collaboration with, Scan in particular, creating these platforms that, 50 years ago, no one made their own slides. And now everyone has a PowerPoint installed on their laptop, and these creative tools are there.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to briefly sort of on the way out talk about this sort of broadening participation.
Well, okay, so some of those tools might have been I can't remember how long ago it was produced, but that ability to generate, and you can go to a site and use the tool to generate an AI-generated human being, and you keep refreshing and a new face appears, and a new face appears. None of these people are real. The Gauguin tool that we've just recently demonstrated, where you can be the best artist in the world from being the worst artist in the world, to be able to draw a straight line and say hill, and draw a stick and say tree. And from one side of the screen you'll see your straight line and your differentiation between sky and land, and another straight line and say water. And what you'll see on the other side of the screen is an image which you could only wish you could create, because what we're doing there is saying, well, you've drawn a line that says tree, so we know what a tree looks like when it's on a hill this far up, so there's a tree. Now we'll draw a pool around the front of it and say water. Well, we know what water looks like. We know that water has to interact with land and flow onto the land. And we also know that it will reflect a tree that's in front of it. So then we'll click on something else that says snow. And immediately that landscape looks like a snowy landscape, because we're using AI to monitor many, many, many different images of a snowy-based landscape on a hill with a tree and some water. So the water turns to ice, and so on and so forth. But the image it creates is just incredible, and it almost challenges you, so that the next time you go in an art gallery, you'll think, well, was that painted? Or is it AI generated?
Well,
Absolutely, yeah.
Spot the difference. Sonal, any final thoughts on sort of broadening accessibility to the platform from the perspective of Scan? Like, where do you want to see things go?
I think we're keen to engage with media, creative and entertainment. So we're keen to kind of just maybe have a conversation, understand where you'd like to kind of move forward, and see if there is anything potentially we could help you with. And just to mention on Simon's comments on the IAM AI video, it's actually being run just outside on the breakout area. So to kind of get a better idea of the applications, feel free to come and engage with us. And I think, if anything, if there is any questions, we're happy to take that after the session.
Brilliant. So what a better thing to have than Lancashire Hot Pot and AI discussions. So thanks so much for being here. Nvidia Scan, it's a pleasure. And again, this is an open call for interaction. So both will be here today and tomorrow for the demos. So get the ball rolling and set up these next £20 million Innovate UK calls. This is all, it has to start somewhere, and these guys are here to help. So thanks everyone, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.